Another thing that console provides is a simple way of timing functions. And I've prepared two versions of a simple function that calculate a student's letter grade based on the score. And here is a simple version of the calculator that uses just an if then else statement. And here's a shorter but more complicated version that does math on the score, chops it off at values less than 0 and greater than 100, so that you're guaranteed to have a number between 0 and 100, and then multiplies the score by 10 and truncates it to an integer, so that you end up with 0 for scores 0 to 10, and 1 for scores 10 to 20, and so on, all the way up to scores between 80 and 90 and 90 and 100, and then uses the bucket that the score fits into in order to look up the score directly in this array of grading scales. And so it might be normal to wonder, well, which of these is faster for my code? Um, well, we can find out by calling console. Now, console is going to provide the time in milliseconds between a starting point and an ending point. And each of these functions is going to be very fast. It's not, neither of them is doing that much in terms of calculation. So what we really want to do to compare them is run them millions of times, and basically enough times that we can get a meaningful sample of how long they take. So the loop might be something like define a constant like runs equal to some number like a million. We'll start with a million and then we'll increase it as we go. And then we're going to have a loop like for I equals 0, I less than runs, I plus plus. Here we're going to actually call grade 1 on a number. So the number, we want to have something between 0 and 100. So let's go ahead and take I divided by runs is going to give us a number between 0 and 1. And so if we multiply that by 100, we'll end up with a number between 0 and 100. So we're going to end up with something like let score equal 100.0 times I divided by runs. And that should give us a number between 0 and 100. And then we can just pass that into pass that into grade 1, and that will calculate the grade. Now, we're not actually going to do anything with grade. All we really want to know is how long this takes. So to start the timer, we're going to call console.time, and then you give it a label. If you don't give it a label, it just uses a default label, but we're going to give it a label grade 1. And then after you've executed your code, you're going to call console.timeEnd and give it the same label to stop the timer. So that's going to be grade 1 again. And this will cause it to output a message to the console that includes the time to run the code. So let's go ahead and give that a shot and see what we end up with. So running it a million times only took 29 milliseconds, and we probably want to get up to, say, 5 seconds or so. So first thing I'm going to do is every time through the loop, I'm paying for the overhead of these two calls. But I'm going to make sure that when I compare the two functions, they're both going to have exactly the same loop there, so that they both get penalized equally. So what I will do is let's multiply it. That should be about 300 milliseconds, and that should be about 3 seconds, give or take. So let's go ahead and see. And let me try one more time. So yeah, so that's about 5 seconds. So it looks like about 4.8 seconds plus or minus a tenth of a second, 4.9 plus or minus a tenth. Seems to be hovering pretty close to 4.8 now. 4.9. A lot of it's going to depend on anything else that I have running on my system. So there's version 1 of it, and now for version 2, I'm just going to go ahead and copy all that code. This is going to be grade 2, and then here we're going to call the grade 2 function. So that's going to be the only difference between the two. I invite you to guess which you think is going to be faster before I actually run it. So you have a longer function, but the logic is simpler. And here you have a more concise function, but it's doing more complicated math. And if we run it, so first version takes 5 seconds. Second version takes 7.4 seconds. So let's run it again. Eight seconds that time. So somewhere between 2.5 and 3 seconds slower for the this version. So this version is about 50% slower than that version. Seems to be pretty consistent that the second one is slower.